I'm so glad to be here with you. We have so much that we would like to share. We come from the same place. We both studied at the EPFL here in Lausanne, Switzerland. I worked 10 years in Schindler in very different positions. I went from core IT into sales, into finance, and then into creating a digital innovation hub. And now since the last 2 years I work for the Swiss Post, where I'm responsible for the strategy and the architecture.
I worked as a developer, then a systems architect in a software company doing an ERP. After that, I worked as a CIO at a pump manufacturer. And then finally, I'm now working at Microsoft as a technology specialist. Together, we have a good understanding of what makes this digital transformation possible and what hinders it. And we want to help the companies, and especially the Swiss companies, to understand how they can evolve and how they can still be very interesting for these new generations. Let's talk first about structures. In Switzerland, we are big fans of these hierarchical structures where there is a boss and there are people taking orders. I remember that you told me that you think it's not appropriate anymore.
I think in what we say VUCA world, a very complex world where you have more and more to manage the higher you go in an organization. You start to have a lot of different responsibility and skills that you need to be able to manage.
So Laetitia, tell me a bit more about your role.
So I'm working at the Swiss Post. I'm part of the executive committee for the group IT. It's about 1,200 IT employees. And I'm responsible for the technology, the strategy and the steering with a team of about 60 people reporting to me. So I think starting with the size of 60, you realize, okay, now I need to be responsible for, on one side, making sure that the budget is achieved, that the people have the right skills and are performing, that the day-to-day job is done, that we choose the right technology and the right strategy. And then I also need to communicate with all the stakeholders, do all the politics. And all of these needs to be mastered by one person that is usually supposed to know it much better than all of the people within its organization. Because this person at the top needs to make all the big decisions, and then it cascades down where the people basically apply those decisions. It's so silly when you have people, 60, 100, 1,000 employees, that all the decision, all the knowledge, all the thinking is concentrated and done only with a few number of people. And I think, when you have so many people, let's leverage all these ideas, all these cleverness, all this knowledge.
You don't like those old-fashioned hierarchical structures, but actually I do. I do like them because it is a structure, it works. You know who is the boss, who is taking decisions, and then it also brings you a form of security, Like you're safe, somebody else took the decision, now your job is to do the best of it. And also it's in a hierarchical structure, you get a clear description of what you need to do for when, and then you know who will judge your work. So how come you think it doesn't work anymore?
Exactly because of what you say. I think the fact that you don't need to think about what you need to do and that it's coming in a golden spoon in your mouth, I think this is really a pity and a waste of the cleverness of the organization and the people we have. And I also think, like you were saying, then it's very clear it's one person that is judging you. I think it's something that is not reflecting the impact of the work that people are doing. It's rarely the work that you do only for one person. It should be the work that you do for your team or for your organization, or sometimes, hopefully, even bigger for your customer, for your society. And so you should not only be judged by one person.
One of the problems that I saw very often in matrix structures is that, you know, those emails where you send a request to somebody, but you don't really know who does what. So it ends up with 20 people in CC. And because you're very consensual, you don't ask anyone to really do it, and you don't really set a deadline. So what would be your solution for that?
The key for me in what I've been trying is to set really clear responsibilities. And so I've been using some framework and patterns where we really cascade down for what domain you are responsible for, what decision you are allowed to take, but also you become responsible for what you do. Meaning also when there is an issue, it's not enough to delegate up, which is often what happens, right? You have a problem and people come to you or come to me, and I should be able to solve all the problems that all of my team have not been able to solve. How can I be more clever than all of them united?
So it's really funny that you said delegate up. Did you read Monkey Management? In this book, Dr. Edlund explains how, as a manager, you can avoid making your team behave like monkeys and just doing what you tell them to do, and instead how you can coach them so that they find their own answers. This is very important because it can easily avoid you a burnout. So my recommendation to all those managers out there watching this video would be to read this book.
Exactly, and I think structure should empower this kind of thinking. And I think the hierarchical model doesn't do that. So you need to kind of fight against it. You can, but it's a little bit more difficult that if you have more of network structures that reflect more how organizations are actually working in the same way that actually computer, that internet, that cloud is working. They are all network, and we are organized usually as human as network. And so I think these organizations should support more what is natural and how we are actually working. And I believe it can be more efficient. There is a risk, of course, but I think the potential is quite high because you are not optimizing at the level of sub team. You optimize at the level of the organization. So I realized in my team, when we needed, for example, one person for a year for a topic or for a project, we would tend to hire an external. Now that we have this fluid organization, I can look with the performance manager and we can allocate someone 30% on this team, 30% on this other team, and so we then liberate one person's skills for that project, and we don't need an additional headcount for it. So we look, we have this global optimum and not anymore this local optimum. Mm-hmm. I want to be part of a team, and I want to feel myself as a multiplier that empower each person to be even more impactful in the work that they do. And I think many people in my generation and in the younger generation expect more. They expect more flexibility, they expect more possibility, and they want to be more impactful in the way that they work, and that from the beginning. And so I think this will be a competitive advantage for each company that realize this and implement this.
So I think our key message was understand your team, think about your structure, and empower the people that are in your team so that they can bring their own treasure, their own ideas, their own way towards the future. And that's the way you can ensure that your organization is agile and has a future, because it needs to evolve. And for an organization to evolve, it takes a sum of people having ideas together and working together.